We're going to present the results. First, let me talk to you about the context. The COVID pandemic hit us just as many others. The aviation was very strongly hit for the commercial airlines, but also the business airlines. We'll talk about this later on. We quickly decided to contribute, to take part in the resilience operation. We think that thanks to the Falcon that we had put at the disposal of the armed forces at a critical time for our country, and in the Aviation Without Borders organization, people could travel within France swiftly and safely to balance out the health effort in France. And we rebuilt our operations in the company, as you saw in the picture, the production tool, but also the tertiary sector, because the workstations were redesigned to take into account social distancing. We quickly, and this was demonstrated, we started working from home intensively. To give you an idea, 500 employees at the beginning of the year. From 500, we went to 4,000 employees in just a few days. So it was a major effort to maintain a certain activity when everything had stopped 2 days after the 16th of March. We immediately launched a continuity plan with one major priority to support the armed forces, especially the French forces, but also the foreign ones, to support a few Falcon clients who kept flying during the crisis, and to try and maintain a certain level of production and delivery of Rafales and Falcons during this very delicate period. The development of Falcon 6X, which is a priority to keep on time with our timeline of 2022. We had to coordinate the actions of the different players of the 6X, whether they were in the United States, in Canada, in France, so that we might not delay this program, which is the case today. We also had to deal with the supply chain, identify and adapt the loads with our subcontractors so that we could keep on with our efforts, not only the internal efforts, but efforts with the entire ecosystem contributing to the Rafale and the Falcons. And the last point, and this was also recalled in the film, in the support plan to aeronautics, the CORAC actions. In very little time, Dassault Aviation contributed to the CORAC, the Civil Aviation Research Council, so that we can have a carbon-free roadmap, and so as to contribute to the effort of the French authorities and the European authorities, that is to have a carbon-free aviation very soon. One of the consequences of the COVID, not only health, but economic, of course. Some of our clients delayed the time when the aircraft would be delivered. We delivered 30 Falcons by 2020. We will tell you about the details instead of the 40 planned. So we've lost 10, which will be carried over next year. And the fact that the orders were not up to the mark, we will talk about this later on. So therefore, we still have a few aircraft available this year. So beyond this lag in net sales, which is related to the economic impacts with our clients, is also the costs of the expenses, of all the measures. This expense was immediately taken into account in our cash, and luckily so, support from the state, which I'd like to thank for thanks to all the measures announced immediately by the state, furloughing, etc., etc. So these effects we will have to deploy them over time. We'll talk about the military and the civil sectors. Maybe you will have some questions. We'll have to assess the impacts over the longer term of this major crisis. Now, in spite of all this, I'd like to tell you that we are preserving an unchanged ambition in terms of our development and in our strategy. We'll keep selling our Falcons. We're still selling them. We will keep developing our future products, and we will renew our range, 6X. We will pursue our efforts for the future Falcon. I will not tell you much more about that today. We are discussing some additional batches with France for the Rafale and with some other countries for exports. We are developing our multi-mission Falcons, whether it's for the Archange program or the Maritime Albatros program that should give way to some new orders at the end of the year. The technologies within CORAC, so efforts in self-funding, self-financing to prepare future technologies, helped by the support from the government for CORAC, the MGF program. You saw the launching of the first step at the beginning of this year for the demonstrator. So we pursued this work. It was difficult because setting up the physical platforms was not doable, and this was replaced by a lot of exchanges through video conferencing. But we kept intact our development ambitions during this first phase, and we will have a second phase in the coming year. The contribution to the MALE program, we have adapted this program to meet the needs of the LOCAR and the 4 countries, and we hope that this program will be able to start in the coming months. The high level of research and development, I'll tell you more about this later on. The continuity of our transformation plan, we're going to maintain it. More than ever, we will need digital transformation for us and for our supply chain, an extended engineering platform that plans for manufacturing according to the new tools and the new ways of designing aircraft, producing them, and supporting them. We have just rescheduled our plans so as to adapt ourselves because of the various constraints. We have adapted our workforce. We had a lower workload, 30 aircraft instead of 40. Will the market evolve or not? That's one of the major questions. And according to the assumptions, the additional Rafale orders, the return for Falcon orders, we will see how we will adapt our workforce to this planned workload. All this was done in total transparency with the trade union representatives of the company. As for the activity, you've seen it in the film. We delivered 7 Rafale to India and Qatar in the first half of 2020. We have pursued negotiations with the state on the additional batches or the additional batch. We worked on the F4 standard. It's been delayed a bit because of the COVID. We'll have to ramp up in the coming months. As you know, I'd like to remind you, no deliveries of Rafale France in 2020 or 2021. This is the French military procurement law void. So we will have deliveries for exports. France will start resuming deliveries of the Rafale from 2022 onwards until 2024 to keep delivering the 180 aircraft ordered. And we have resumed, this was slowed down during the COVID period, we have started prospecting for exports to win new contracts for the Rafale. This might take more time because the COVID effect is not helping us speed up the number of contracts because a lot of countries are directly affected, either directly from the health point of view or indirectly from the economic point of view. As for the future combat air system, we're continuing our work with our partners. The major part of the work which was done was to integrate Spain. You know that Spain was not there at the beginning, and they joined us later on. Now, the whole issue was to integrate them, and this is underway. And Spain is going to become a full-fledged partner, whether it's in the GCS studies or in the definition of the demonstrators, the various pillars of this major program that we are pursuing with our partners, and especially with the DGA, which is the leader in this area. The Eurodrone, I talked about this, the negotiations are underway. Airbus is the leader in the negotiations with OCCAR, which represents the 4 countries interested by this program, and Leonardo and Dassault Aviation are the main partners. So we have a very strong coordination with Airbus to support Airbus in the discussions with OCCAR. As for the multi-mission aircraft, I talked about this, Archange. We had the first order 2 aircraft, a third airplane will be activated. It's an option. This will happen at a later stage. We are defining the technical missions of the Albatros 2000. We delivered a third Falcon 50 Surmar equipped with hatches for dropping SARs, search and rescue kits, and we delivered the Falcon 2000 LX to DLR, which had been bought during the Berlin Air Show. Atlantic 2, the third upgraded ATL-2 out of the 7 to be performed by Dassault Aviation. This was released early April. And the Navy is very happy with this revamped ATL-2. The Falcon context, the COVID epidemic hit us directly, impacting the business jet market. For some of our clients, we pursued our support to them, so our client support is active, although very slowly. We've pursued, as you've seen, the delivery of Falcons. You'll see this in our figures, and we pursued the development of the Falcon 6X. So there was a period where we were startled after the 16th of March, where we completely stopped, and then we started reopening step by step. And thanks to remote working, we really managed to work well to keep up with our lead times and to keep up with our objectives. I'd just like to note that there's a strong increase in the business jet business. The figures I have are close to 80% if we compare at the same time with the same time last year. These are shorter flights, intra-US or intra-Europe or intra-Asia, and they have really developed in terms of volume since the past few weeks. Another trend is on the second-hand. We hope that there'll be more activity in the field of sales of new aircraft. As for the 6X, you saw a little bit in the film. We are on time in spite of the difficulties because of the closing of the borderlines. We had a few difficulties working with our partners, but the aircraft number 1 is completed now in Mérignac. We powered it up. The aircraft number 2 and 3 are being assembled. The Pratt & Whitney engines are here. Nominal development, 2,000 hours of testing, plus 16,000 hours for the high-pressure system, which are the critical parts of an engine. We have a second test bench with the number 1 engine, which will be the one that will be used on the aircraft. And of course, we will reduce the CO2 emissions in compliance with the regulations and largely above noise performance requirements. And the maiden flight will be at the beginning of 2021, and it will enter into service in 2022. we are pursuing our future Falcon project. I want to disappoint you once again. Not that I don't want to talk to you about this. We should have made an announcement in this first half of the year, as I had announced at the beginning of the year. But the problem with the COVID is not making me put off the development, but the announcement, because if clients cannot come and see us, cannot discuss, they cannot contribute to this announcement. So together with them, we would like to put it off at a moment when it will be easier to travel, which is not yet the case for the moment. And now I'm going to go on to the results. As for the order intakes, we have 5 Falcons that have entered since the beginning of the year. This was before the COVID crisis, just before this period, compared to the 7 last year. We had a little more last year because we had announced our results in September, but the first half of 2019 was a bit flattish too. In terms of deliveries, we delivered 16 Falcons in the first half of the year. We plan to deliver 30 this year instead of the 40 that were planned at the beginning of the year and the 17 that had been delivered at the same time last year. So therefore, the backlog is 42 versus 53 at the end of 2019. As for Rafael Export, no new orders. The deliveries, 7 Rafales were delivered at the beginning of this year out of a total planned of 13, and this objective has not changed in comparison with the 26, which were the deliveries planned in 2019. So the 13 is what had been planned in the contract underway with our Indian and Qatari friends. So therefore, the backlog for the Rafale will be 68 Rafales remaining, out of which the 28 of the 4th batch, second part out of the 180 French. In terms of figures, the order intake is 1 billion, much under what we had last year. The net sales, 2.6 billion, slightly lower than last year, with mainly the delivery of export Rafales, which are at 50% of net sales. Last year we had deliveries of ATL2, so you cannot just bank on the number of aircraft delivered. 1 Falcon, 2 less, and a few Rafales less, and the backlog is at 16.2 billion compared to the 18 at the end of 2019, with a major part of the backlog which is in export Rafales.
Then regarding our consolidated self-funded R&D, you see we're maintaining our efforts in terms of the development of the 6X and the future Falcon will be around 600. The 600 figure I mentioned to you at the start of the year. As the net sales are going down, obviously the percentage proportionally is going up, 9.9% therefore of net sales, as you see here. Compared with last year, it was 8.4% of net sales. And you've got to take account of the results that we would have had if we hadn't had COVID. So in terms of the adjusted consolidated income statement, you see here the net sales figure with the operating income, 55 million, operating margin 2.1%, financial income minus 19. Thales and other equity affiliates, 60 million contribution down compared to the previous year. Thales will be announcing its results to the newspapers and the analysts tomorrow morning. And after deducting taxes then, the net income comes out at 87 million. That's a net margin of 3.3%. Obviously down compared with the same period last year and down compared with what that result should have been in the absence of COVID. In terms of cash flow then, you know the company decided to forego the payout of a dividend. There was a dip in distribution of dividends from Thales, of course, too. So drop in cash position mainly because of the working capital requirement in the area of Rafale, we had a lot of down payments, and further to deliveries, this is the situation. There are deliveries being made at the moment. So the guidance for 2020 then, revised guidance that is, in an uncertain COVID-19 context, it's very hard to know what's going to happen. And it's hard to know how things will evolve, how the COVID virus will evolve. It's still around quite a lot, heavily so in countries like the United States. That's an important market for the global economy and, of course, for business jets too. So it's a delicate context to make forecasts in. And it's therefore hard to forecast anything. But nonetheless, if our discussions with our clients that are going on at the moment are anything to go by, we think we can forecast a delivery of 30 Falcons if the COVID situation doesn't go downhill too much in the United States. It's fairly bad, but our Little Rock plant is still operating in spite of the COVID crisis. So it's a risk that I'd like to recall there. But this objective, we think, is tenable if there isn't, as I say, a major deterioration due to COVID. Now, Rafales, delivery of 13 Rafales, the same as before the COVID crisis hit, and of course, decrease of net sales because we'll have the drop of 10 Falcons going from 40 to 30, but also in the area of support. Falcon support, obviously, if the planes haven't flown, well, there'll be an immediate impact on the ordering of spare parts and servicing of Falcon aircraft around the world. So that's what I had to say halfway through the year now, after this harsh crisis that impacts ourselves and our subcontractors. And we've continued doing our job, and we're looking to the future with a certain amount of uncertainty, but with certain assets, we think, as well, to go forward.